What's a moment when you realized you were being watched and it wasn't just paranoia? Story 1. When I was young, I went to a corn maze with a friend of mine in Reno, noticed a man with a camcorder following us both. When I pointed him out to my friend, we both decided to run through the corn. He followed us with this horrid smile the whole time, keeping the camera pointed at us the whole time. My parents just kept saying he probably thought you knew how to get out. But I know this guy was a creep. That smile sticks in my mind still. Story 2. Taking care of my dying grandmother at my uncle's home. Back then we thought he was a reformed rapist. I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night from deep sleep. I didn't even know why. I just sat straight up immediately and opened my eyes. My rapist uncle scurried away from behind me, where he must have been staring at me. Within months of my grandma dying, we figured out he was raping one of his daughters and got him sent back to jail for another decade. I hear he is out again. He should be locked up for life. He will never reform. Honestly, I don't believe that rapists reform anymore. Story 3. I kept noticing the same car parked near my house at odd hours for several days. Then I saw the same guy following me to different places. That's when I knew it wasn't just in my head. Answer: whoa. For a period, there was a car who would sit outside my house every few weeks, and every time would blast, another one bites the dust. Sometimes daytime, sometimes later in the night. It was strange. At my address prior to that, I had someone knock on my window a few times in the middle of the night. I reported it after like the third time and was just told maybe they got the wrong place. Not sleeping on the bottom floor ever again. Story 4. When I was a kid, I was watching Dukes of Hazzard in the living room, got the feeling I was being watched, turned around, and saw a guy staring at me from the porch. I screamed. My dad came running out from his bedroom, then saw the guy and went back to get his gun. When he came out with it, the guy on the porch bolted into the woods, and my dad went out to chase him. We lived in a pretty isolated area, so I don't think it was just an accident that the guy happened to be on our porch. Story 5. A security guard was literally hiding amongst the stuffed animals in the storeroom like you see in the movies. I worked midnight shift at Six Flags, vacuuming. There had been some thefts by employees. So I'm in the storeroom of one of the toy shops, looking at the various crap in stock, when I notice human eyes in with the big pile of stuffed animals, like that scene in E.T. Security Dude thought he was going to get a bust. He went to a fair amount of trouble setting the trap. Story 6. I was hiking at a state park with friends, but they had turned around and gone back to the car. I was alone on the trail, hadn't seen or heard anyone in a while, but my skin was crawling and it felt like someone was walking right behind me. I finally gave in and turned back, and there was a mountain lion on the trail behind me. He looked just as startled as me and twice as pissed off. Thankfully, he ran off instead of attacking, but I was a nervous wreck the entire way back to the trailhead, and I told the park rangers before I left. Story 7. Had an ex stalk me excessively for a long time. It wasn't love, it was pure dislike from him, which made it more scary. He also did PI work on the side, private investigator. I remember going to the corner store to get a drink, and shortly after, as I was walking, I received a text, Blue Gatorade. Anytime I would hang out with someone or go on a date, they'd manage to somehow get their contact information and make them ghost me. Went to the police, but they couldn't do anything about it. Stalked me for about 3 years, but was clever enough to make it look random, even though I had a massive folder of proof. Answer: the dating part happened to me while dating a girl. She was being stalked by her ex, and somehow he got my number. We were threatening each other. Lol, I was enjoying roasting him, and then after all the crying the girl did about him, she wouldn't give up his address. Lol. That's the only time someone got my number. But a stalking ex is very common in today's dating world. I went over a girl's house before, and she said her ex has been randomly showing up to her door for the past 4 years, but yet again I looked like the bad guy asking for his address. Story 8. 20-ish years ago, I would shower, go into my bedroom to get dressed. I had lacy curtains, it was daytime plus second floor, so I didn't really consider if people could see me. I'd dance around to music as I got dressed. Got that hair on the back of my neck standing up. Feelings started looking around. Made eye contact with the neighbor old enough to be my grandpa. He started dancing like I had been. I bought real curtains that day. Story 9. I was walking home from a friend's house and was a little bit tipsy. I felt watched as I walked along the old railway lines, and I turned around to a whole herd of cows just staring at me. Creeped me out. Story 10. When I was about, I think, 78, I was walking my dog not far from home. This was in Darwin, in the suburbs, Ouse. I was walking around the block, basically, done it many times before, and around this time after school I'd had cars come by and slow down waiting for me to go past and then go into their driveway. This one particular time it happened like this. The car slowed. I sped up to go past the driveway expecting them to pull in. It didn't and went further, so I again went past the next driveway thinking, okay, weird but whatever, surely they'll just park or pull in. The car kept repeating it. It was obviously not aiming for anywhere and would start slowly moving again only when I moved. I felt like a deer being stalked honest. I suddenly felt fudge hunted. But I also doubted myself, like I'm probably being paranoid, maybe they're just dumb or don't know where to park. But I couldn't deny it long. I ended up sort of baiting them. I thought if I start running, they're gonna get out and chase me. So I acted like I didn't realize what they were doing, and at a blind spot of a corner, I knew I went round it, then bolted into these bushes with my dog. Sat there until I knew they were gone. This was after having a school-wide notice of like, be aware there's been cars following kids out of school. I know they were after me. Fuckers went round the block 3 more times while I hid there. I went home and eventually told my mum. I also told her specifically, don't tell name, my sister. I don't want to scare her. I made sure I went with my sister anytime she wanted to walk the dog from them on. Why, she's my twin, but always been anxious. Story 11. I had wanted to block someone that I knew from middle high school on social media for a long time, and finally did it after talking with my then-girlfriend about it. When she asked why I said that, I felt like this person was always watching my activity. Not even 5 minutes after blocking this person, their best friend, who I had not spoken to for almost 5 years at that point, just happened to randomly message me. I never responded, but that absolutely vindicated my feelings about the situation. Story 12. When I was growing up, a few specific cars used to park outside our house with someone just sitting inside. The cars and drivers changed every so often, but it was so constant and so unsettling that I started to note down the license plates. I can even still remember one now. 30 years later, it was there so much. My mother used to be creeped out too, but my dad always dismissed it. One time, we were driving home from a trip to Europe. We lived in the UK, and the same car followed us all the way from somewhere in France to our literal home. When we pulled up to our drive, the car that was following continued on along our road. After that, and ever since then, I know someone was either watching us or protecting us. My dad did work for the government, but I'm convinced he was actually a spy. Since he retired, I've never seen cars parked outside their place. Story 13. I was about 14 and did summer secretary cleaning work for my father at his small business. He had 3 buildings on the property: his offices, his storage workshop, and a building he would lease out. I would notice a man from the leased space taking smoke breaks while I was out mowing the yard, but I didn't think much of it. Once, my dad asked me to wash his motorcycle, and he left for a job site. I noticed the man was watching me longer and more intently than usual. Actually, my dad's foreman came out of the workshop and confronted the man, and he removed himself. Later that day, the man walked toward me, trying to start a conversation. Another one of my dad's employees confronted him and told him he had no business speaking to me. He said to go inside and keep all the office doors locked while I was working. Something about that guy creeps me out. Just a few days later, the police descended on the leased building and arrested the man. He was apparently a pedophile who was attempting to live under a false identity in a new area. Story 14. I was stalked and recorded by Scientologists after organizing a protest against their church in my city. Story 15. When I looked over and saw that she was watching me. My senior year of college, I kept catching this girl turned around in her chair just staring me. When I'd catch her, she'd give a shy smile and turn back around, and then do it again within an hour. She was cute, so after a couple of weeks of this, I asked her out. Sorry, I have a boyfriend. WTH. Story 16. I grew up near Chicago, and I had paranoia after school because a certain red car would trail me. I would take different ways home every day. After a few weeks of this happening, the school actually called my mom and warned about what they overheard. Not too long after, I was a judge at a skateboarding competition, and I got stabbed in the shoulder in front of 100 people. Fortunately, it was in the shoulder and not the neck, like they intended. I was fine, but the cops gave 0 shoot, and I got a big scar still. That happened 16 years ago, and I still think about it every day. Story 17. Was house sitting for some family members while they were on vacation. One day, I couldn't shake the feeling like I was being watched. Looked outside, no suspicious cars or anything. Even though I didn't have any evidence, I went around the house and shut all the blinds and curtains. Called my boyfriend and told him that I was super paranoid about being watched, but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Nothing happened the rest of the week. The family returned and called me a few days later, asking if I'd seen anything suspicious while I was there. When I asked why, it turned out 2 houses on the street were robbed. One of the houses was their next-door neighbor. This happened during the Christmas holidays, so the police surmised that the robber was camping out and watching the houses to see who was on vacation. Story 18. I was the GM of a nerdy collectibles store in a mall. We closed at 9 p.m. My wife and I were walking to the parking lot with my 17-year-old employee, her mom, and her 14-year-old sister. My wife and I parked closer to the entrance, so I bid them good night and got into my car, and my wife got into hers. That's when I noticed the parking garage had exactly 1 car in it, other than mine and the employee's mom's car. A pickup truck was idling with its lights off at an odd angle, and as soon as my wife and I got into my car, the truck turned its lights on and started creeping toward the 2 girls and their mom. The truck had illegally dark tint and a license plate obscurer. As ex-law enforcement, I knew to trust my gut, and I did not like this. I started my car, turned on my dash cam, and started to put my car between the girls and the truck. The truck sped up, almost hitting me while trying to get around me. Mind you, there was no exit in that part of the garage. The only thing there were the girls and their car. The truck tried again to maneuver around me, but my wife caught on and moved her car to block the truck's access to the girls' car, allowing them to safely enter their vehicle. The truck then peeled out for the exit ramp. I followed, hoping to get footage on my dash cam. After reviewing the footage, I gave mall security a description of the truck and learned that several other mall employees had reported it following them. My employee had managed to get a photo of the license plate. We reported it to the local police, which led to the driver being arrested at the mall a week later on existing warrants. Story 19. One time I was riding a bike down a country road and kept seeing a helicopter overhead. I kept thinking, LOL, it kinda seems like that helicopter is following me, but brushed it off because it obviously wasn't. Then a bunch of police pulled up and said the whole area was on lockdown for a manhunt because some dude had shot at the police and that helicopter was definitely following me. Story 20. Rented a cheap Airbnb, felt uneasy, and shined my phone flashlight at the smoke detector. A little red LED blinked back, turned out to be a hidden camera aimed at the bed. I grabbed my stuff and checked out within 5 minutes. Answer: I get why you think there might have been a hidden camera, but from what I've seen, smoke detectors usually flash red when the battery's dying. Could it be a coincidence that the LED blinked at the same time you used your phone flashlight? On the other hand, I have cameras with night vision, and the red LEDs are always on. They don't blink when it's dark. I'm curious how you arrived at this conclusion. Edit. Grammar. Story 21. We had a car that pulled up in front of our home every single night from about 1:30 a.m. 3:00 a.m. For about a month, I convinced myself it was just some person posting up there for some harmless reason, but it never stopped. One night, we called the police, and the second I hung up the phone, the car darted off. Again, convinced myself it was just a coincidence. Then, the next night, when he pulled up, I called the cops again, and boom, he darted off again. At that point, I knew something was off. So many times we considered sending my husband out there to bang on the window and ask the guy what he was doing, but I always felt it was too dangerous. The cops basically did nothing and didn't care to help us try and trap the guy. We ended up selling the house because I couldn't sleep there anymore, and I still never found out why the guy was watching us. You'll never forget the creepy jerk car with blackout windows. Story 22. Flip side. Back when I was 15-16, I used to punk cigs off my mother at night when she was sleeping. I was always so nervous that I would go into her room and just stare at her, thinking she'd wake up at the exact moment my hand touched her pack. And then she would wake up. Every time, just from me staring so hard at her to see if she really was sleeping. Later on, I would write an "I love you" note in case she woke up. I would just say, "Oh, sorry, Mama. I'm just leaving this note for you." She knew what I was doing. Teenagers are stupid. Story 23. I was in my bedroom getting changed, and I felt like someone was watching me. I turned to look out the window, and there was a kangaroo staring at me. I live in suburbia. Story 24. Once saw a car follow me through each turn. I took slow down when I did, and stopped when I did. As well, had to drive to a local police station. Noticed he didn't follow me again, but still had to stay at the station just to be safe. Story 25. I was hiking on a trail through the woods when I suddenly got that "something's watching you" feeling. I looked to my left, and there was a black bear about 6 feet away from me. He kind of gave me that awkward look dogs give you when they don't know why you're staring at them, which would have been cute if, a 600-pound bear wasn't basically right next to me. I kept my eyes on him, slowly backed away, and after a bit it turned around and went back into the woods. I kept turning my head to look behind me the whole rest of my hike because I felt like it was following me. Story 26. I was staying at a friend's house for a couple weeks, and we got up super early one morning to drive to the airport. Whole other story. Anyway, for the first time since I got there, the dew was still on the grass, untouched except for the giant man-sized footprints going around the side and back of the house and stopping outside my window. I was glad we were spending the next few nights in Vegas. Story 27. On the train in Vienna, my friend and I caught a guy staring at us without breaking eye contact. I warned her under my breath because I assumed he saw we were obviously tourists and thought he might try to pickpocket on the way out. Our stop came up and, sure enough, he got off behind us. He seemed to fall behind in the crowd, so I dropped my guard and we focused on trying to validate our tickets at the exit of the station. I sensed someone behind us and turned to tell them to go ahead of us. We didn't know how to use the machine and didn't want to hold anyone back. It was the same guy, and he wasn't waiting to use the machine. He was fudge self-care. I grabbed my friend and walked briskly away, and he kept following us, hands still down his trousers. He only left when we darted into a shop and asked for the police. Fudge that guy. Answer. Back when I lived with my folks, my mother came back from walking the dog one day and said a man had been following her and self-care. She laughed it off, but I didn't think it was as funny. The guy was still in front of our home when I stepped outside with my dad's old Colt revolver. It was inert and unloaded, but the pervert didn't need to know that. He tried to speed walk away as nonchalantly as he could and eventually took off running after I pursued for a few blocks. It was brandishing and it was very stupid to do, but we also never had an issue with him again. Story 28. I was on my university campus for a summer class, so there weren't many people around. I needed to take summer classes to graduate on time, as I worked nights during the semester, so my options were limited. Anyway, it was a hot June-July day. I wore a sundress and arrived a bit before class was scheduled to start, so I could review my notes and go through the readings for the lecture. Going through empty hallways, it really doesn't take much to feel like you're being followed or watched. I had taken an odd route to begin with, since I'd parked at the free spots on the street to avoid paying. I had to cross through several areas to get to the humanities building, but it was indoors, so I wasn't getting destroyed by the sun. Moving through the halls toward the classroom, there was no reason for anyone else to be taking that way, unless they were in the same class. A few times I turned around and saw someone duck around a corner, but I knew he was there. I'd heard footsteps behind me in the empty corridors. Finally, close enough to the classroom, I ducked into the closest washroom. There was no lock on the external door, but I hoped that a door marked women would be enough. I wanted to believe that I was just imagining things, but I couldn't lie to myself anymore. He opened the door. I screamed and forced it shut, but I'll never forget his dark, beady eyes staring at me. There was no pushback, so after a couple of minutes, I went to the furthest stall and locked the door. There was no number for campus security posted anywhere in there, and this was back when I only had a BlackBerry, so the internet browser on that was Shoot. I was too nervous to call 911 and blanked on how I could just call the operator to get campus security. I waited in there for what felt like forever. When the door finally opened again, I peeked and recognized a classmate and was able to ask her if any creepy dude was waiting outside. She thankfully said no. There was another time a guy in a silver sports car followed me for several blocks before pulling over and telling me to get in. I don't miss being in my 20s. Story 29. I was a 17-year-old pizza delivery driver at a mom-and-pop shop. This was back in 2005, 2006. There was a bald dude who had a criminal record. He worked in the kitchen. Every single time I turned around, he was looking at me. I always had a baby face, and I'm a man. Nothing awkward beyond that, but I see the potential for it if I had stayed there for work much longer. Story 30. November 2015, woke up at 2 a.m. Felt like I was being watched. Rolled over, and there, right outside my window, was a drone hovering. The instant I stood up, it went directly up out of sight. Story 31. Pretty much every time I go out to work on my fence line, my flock of geese will sneak up behind me. Imagine turning around only to find a bunch of geese giving you some bombastic side-eye or creepy children of the corn stare after stealthily waddling over an acre to do so. Story 32. Taking a shower in a basic beach bungalow and felt as if someone was watching me. Looked up and saw a pair of eyes staring at me through the louved breeze blocks. Screamed, and BF on the front porch thought it was an insect, so he didn't move fast enough to catch the pervert. Story 33. When the wife asks me what I was doing because she was watching me on our camera system in our house, I can tell you how unsettling it is to know someone has been watching you in your own house, even if it's your spouse. Luckily, I don't do anything I shouldn't. Story 34. I used to take the same bus home every night from work. One evening, I noticed a man always sitting across from me, never speaking, just staring. One night, I took a different route home, no bus. As I unlocked my apartment door, I looked down the hall. He was standing at the end, smiling. Since that night, I've never taken the bus again, and I never seen it again. Story 35. New.